This section covers the following: sole trader, partnership, private limited company, public limited company, and not-for-profit organisation. First, we will begin with business ownership for sole traders. When starting a business, an entrepreneur needs to decide the form of business ownership they will have. A sole trader is a form of business that is owned and managed by one person. Being a sole trader is the simplest way to start a business, with little form filling and cost. Examples might include a hairdresser or carpenter. Now let's just look at the advantages and disadvantages of a sole trader. So you get to be your own boss. You can decide things quickly, as it's your own business and you can make all those decisions. It's relatively easy to set up. You just pretty much need a bank account and to complete your annual accounts. You get to keep all the profits to yourself and you make your own decisions. Now there are also some disadvantages of a sole trader. The first one being unlimited liability. So say if someone wanted to sue you, you would be liable. You may also lack finance. So when you are a sole trader, banks are less likely to lend to you. So you're less likely to be able to raise a loan in order to put into the business. The workload can sometimes be heavy because you are doing it by yourself. You may not have all the skills required, and a lot of sole traders can find it extremely difficult to take holiday. Now the next type of business would be a partnership. A partnership is created when two or more people set up in business to pursue a common purpose, such as profit. For example, doctors or lawyers setting up a practice. Now, if two of you enter into a partnership, you must abide by the Partnership Act. This contains rules about setting up the partnership. And part of setting up the partnership, you will need a deed of partnership as an agreement between the partners. So the deed of partnership sets out the rules of the partnership, such as how profits will be divided and how the partnership will be valued if someone wants to leave. If there is no deed of partnership, profits may be divided equally. So if we just think about why this could be unfair, one partner may be putting in a lot more work than the other one. So if we just look at the advantages and disadvantages of a partnership, so with the sole trader, it was just one person setting up the business by themselves, but with a partnership there would be two of you, so you would be able to share the workload. There are sometimes more sources of finance available, more than if you were just a sole trader. And also with a partnership, you can share skills. So one of you may be able to set up a website for the business, and the other person may be more of the manual person carrying out the tasks. So that's another advantage of a partnership too. Now, disadvantages of a partnership, well, you may disagree with the other partner. Also, a partnership, you are still liable, so it's unlimited liability. If someone sues you, both of you are still fully liable. And also, you're liable for the actions of the other partner too. So, as an entrepreneur, we have covered setting up a sole trader or a partnership, but another way to set up your business is a company. So a company is a business that has its own legal identity. It can own items, it can owe money, it can sue, and it can also be sued too. Now, companies come with a shareholder, or they come with shareholders. So a shareholder is a person or an organisation that owns part of a company. Each shareholder owns a share of the business. Now, with companies, shareholders have limited liability, which means the most that they can lose is the cost of the shares they purchased and no other company debts. So, say if that company is to be sued, the shareholder will not be sued personally, they will just lose their share. And also with companies, managers make the decisions and control the company. So if we just quickly look at the advantages and disadvantages of companies. So the first one is limited liability, which we have discussed. They have a better status in the eyes of some customers. So some customers do prefer to use a company rather than a sole trader. Not all customers, but some do. The company will also continue after the death of the founders. So because it is separate, it will continue. And it can also bring in investors. Now, the disadvantages of a company, there is a lot more paperwork, so you have to register the company with Companies House. You must disclose information on sales and profits, and you have to have the accounts independently checked. Also, if there are other investors, the original founder is not in full control of the business. So with companies, there are two types that you can set up. The first one we will cover is the private limited company. So a private limited company tends to have shareholders who have started the business, such as family members. Shares cannot be advertised to the general public and must be sold privately. The Articles of Association can restrict who shares are sold to so that the original owners can keep control of the business if they wish. Investors can be offered shares in return for money invested. So here are just some advantages and disadvantages of a limited company. So again, it is limited liability, which is great. More customer confidence in the business status, and managers can be employed to run the business while shareholders profit even after the founder dies. The disadvantages, so there's extra legal procedures that cost money. Some financial information must be published. Investors may become shareholders, reducing control of the original owner. Now, the next type of company is a public limited company. So the one prior to this was private limited, and after the company name you would have LTD. But with public limited company you would have PLC instead. So a public limited company can sell shares to the general public. Shares can be bought and sold on the stock exchange. Share prices change when there is more or less demand for them. Companies tend to be very big, with the owners of shares being large investors such as banks or even countries. For example, only 14% of UK shares are owned by individuals. And large shareholders often want lots of profit to be paid to them, which means less money for the PLC to invest. So just some advantages and disadvantages of the public limited company. So you can generate money from advertising shares on the stock exchange. There is a higher public profile in the media, and its shares are more tempting to investors as can be easily traded. The disadvantages is the company has no control over who buys the shares, so the business could be taken over. There are lots of legal formalities which can be expensive, and the original owners may not have the same objectives as the new shareholders. So we have covered sole traders, partnerships, private limited companies, and public limited companies. Now, the final company is a not-for-profit organisation. So not-for-profit organisations are set up to achieve objectives other than profit, for example, a charity or youth club. The organisation will still have to raise funds to be able to operate, for example, to pay for the rent of a hall or for the youth club. It is different from a business as its purpose is a social one, such as helping young people. And any profits made from fundraising will be used to meet its social purpose. So we can just look at this diagram and we need to make sure we can remember these ways of comparing different forms of business. Now just some summary questions which hopefully you can answer. What is the difference between a sole trader and a partnership? What is an advantage of a business that is a partnership? Give a difference between a partnership and a private limited company. What is an advantage of a business that is private limited company? Give a difference between a private and public limited company. And give an advantage of a business being a public limited company. Now, just one final thing to note. We have covered private and public limited companies. It's important to note that these are completely separate to the private and public sector. So if we refer to the private and public sector, that is something that is completely different to a private and public limited company.